So the second part, greenwashing. Okay, that's part 2 in the book, and I have several wonderful chapters. Let's see, greenwashing, a bloody business. The planet can't survive sustainable animal agriculture. That is Lorelei Poslenik. She's a wonderful activist, and Nicholas Carter actually was just on my podcast. I'm going to give a plug at the end about my podcast, Hope for the Animals podcast, but the episode that I have out now on my podcast is with Nicholas Carter, and we really unpack his wonderful chapter here called Grazing versus the Planet, a failed attempt to greenwash animal farming. And we really dig into regenerative animal ag and grass-fed and stuff like that. So I'm going to talk a bit about it here as well. Let's see. So there's just some wonderful chapters. A fox guarding the hen house. Can animal agriculture reform itself? So that's a great chapter title. All right. So greenwashing. Let's dig in. So, just having the billions of farmed animals alive, no matter how they're raised, right? And maybe I don't want to look at this meat. Let's go back to this one while we're talking about the general, and then we'll get into I'm going to start with the local label. But just having all these animals alive, no matter how they're raised, right? It wastes tons of resources, water, causes pollution. These things really can't change. Again, these are the inherent things, right? Like there's inherent cruelties. These are the inherent impacts. How much water you use. It's really hard to change that. The resources involved, these things really can't change. And it's causing so much destruction, climate disruption, deforestation, wasting water, water pollution, biodiversity loss, so much impact of animal agriculture. And this is really coming to light now, right? I mean, I think that a lot of people are going vegan and learning and feeling out veganism, coming into veganism through the environmental piece, which is just incredible. I'm so glad for that. We need to move quickly because our time is running out on this planet. So that's really, really good. It's a good sign that people are starting to wake up, make this connection, realize that they have so much power on their plate to make change and to reduce their personal carbon footprint, right? But just as with humane washing, the industry is responding, right? And they're kind of like, well, here, we're working on it. Let me help you with that. Let me tell you what to do. We have the solution. Just buy local or organic or free range and all these other labels, right? Sustainable. We're seeing all kinds of labels now. All right, so let's get into it. Now we'll look at this yucky meat. So local. So local, we see this label everywhere, right? We're seeing this it's it's amazing how often I see it and how little is defined, right? How little the definition gets out. What does it mean? How far? Where's local? Is it 50 feet? Is it 500 miles? What's local? And really, it's the product or the store that's defining it. So we don't really have a set definition. It's not a regulated label. So you can say what you want or make it what you want. But just looking at food miles, right? Okay. If you look at a food's carbon footprint, transportation or how far the food traveled is only 11% of the equation. Okay, just 11%. That's how much impact the food miles have. The production phase, how resource intensive the production was of that product, is 83% of the greenhouse gas equation. Okay, so what we have to really look at is the resources and the production, and animal products are heavy on the production phase, right? When they do these life cycle assessment calculations where they look at the impact of a food from the birth, well, with an animal, it would be like the birth to slaughter. With a plant food, it's seed to plate. And they are making these comparisons again and again and again. Animal products are more impactful, use more energy, have more resources, more water, more this, more that, everything, more greenhouse gas. And no matter the label, it doesn't matter what the label is. When the comparison is between an animal product and a plant food, the animal product is always more impactful. I'll just wrap up the local section by saying this. A study in the Journal of Environmental Science and Technology found that switching just 2 meals a week from meat and dairy to a vegetable-based diet achieves more greenhouse gas reduction than buying all locally sourced food. Wow. That's just 2 meals a day. And, still it's better. Local means very little. It means very, very little. So don't get, distracted by the local label. Really going vegan is best. Eating low on the eating plant foods. All right, let's look at organic. So organic. Now, and I'll start by saying something about organic in that this is one of the labels that does have regulation. Of all the labels we're talking about, this is the one that really has the most, I would say, a good amount of regulation. They've got on-site inspection. They've got, it takes some work and some money and some effort to get an organic certification. So there is some oversight there. However, really the only difference, the only reason that you get the organic certification or what they're looking for is that the grain fed to the animals or the feed fed to the animals is organic and the animals are essentially drug-free. Okay, that's basically it. All the other factors, both environmentally and ethically, are unchanged. So yeah. So, but in looking environmentally, there's some regulation. I'll just say quickly, there's some regulation on species by species as far as if they have access to the outside, but it's very industry friendly. Like I said, cows generally have access to the outside. So the organic standard is that cows have to have access to the outside. However, chickens do not. And that's because industry standard is that chickens are usually kept inside. So these labels can be very industry friendly. So anyway, let's look at this chart. Okay, so we've got 3 diets here: veganism, vegetarian, and a diet that includes meat, dairy, and eggs. And going across, we've got a light green line, which is organic farming, and a dark green line, which is conventional farming. Okay, and of course, how far the line goes across is how much impact there is on the planet and on greenhouse gases. This is specific to greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, so look down at the very bottom at that dark green line going across the bottom. That is the standard American diet. That is the SAD diet that everyone is eating, most everyone. And that includes all the animal products and is not organic. So let's say that someone says, I really want to eat more eco-friendly. I really want to, be more conscious around what I'm eating environmentally. I'm going to eat only organic milk and organic dairy or organic meat, organic eggs, right? I'm going to go all organic with my animal products. Okay, so you reduce your impact a bit. You go to that next light green line just above that one, and you've reduced your impact by 8%. Okay, that's something. But let's say that same person says, I really want to eat more eco. I want to reduce my impact through my diet. I'm going to go vegan. And now we're not even talking about organic, just eating vegan. Okay, now you've reduced your impact. You go up to that top dark green line, and you have reduced your impact by 87%. Wow. Right? Okay, that's way better. And you can take it all the way and do organic vegan, and you've reduced your impact by 92%. That's that tiny little light green line at the top. So once again, my message is that, organic, local, these kinds of things with animal products, it may be a little better, it may not be. But truly, the impact where you're going to make some big changes, where you're really going to affect your impact on the climate in your purchases, is by choosing vegan products and vegan living and vegan and vegetables, eating vegan. All right. You don't have to use vegan products. You don't have to buy the vegan meats or anything like that. Not necessary at all. Fine if you want to use that for transition or every now and again, but not necessary. But eating vegan, whole food, plant-based is, of course, the best. Okay, moving on. So free range. So people often think that this is a better solution environmentally, a better label environmentally. But the reason I use this picture, going back to the same picture of the cage-free operation, is because this could be a free-range operation. All they would have to do is open the doors to a little, outdoor patio. Maybe it's a concrete patio, maybe it's a mud patio. I went and saw, when I was going and looking at these places, I saw free-range facilities that had thousands of birds inside a building, and then they had an open door to this little mud hole. It was like a patio with mud. And it was so unappealing that no bird seemed to even want to go out there, right? And they called that free range. Okay. Doesn't matter how long they have that open for there's no regulation on how long they have access to the outside, what that outside access looks like, what the size of that nothing. It's whatever the farmer wants to say. And these labels are awarded no matter what. Basically, they just will, they'll fill out a form for the FDA or the USDA, whoever is awarding these labels, and they're awarded the label. Nobody comes out to look. Nobody asks any questions. It's, nobody is rejected. So they can get whatever label they want. Okay. So, but whenever there's a transition to a truly free-range farm, let me just see what my next one's grass-fed. So sometimes I put a picture of little piggies, but I don't have it here. So whenever there's a transition, though, to like pasture-raised or a kind of a truly free-range farm, and there is this farming happening with pigs, and we talked about that, pasturing pigs, and with chickens as well. So now, if this farmer, let's say that this farmer that has this building wants to actually have his chickens outside in a pasture situation where they actually do have, some space to roam. Okay. So what he would have to do is this is probably maybe on a quarter of an acre of land, right? Half an acre at most. He would have to have acres and acres and acres more space to accommodate all of these birds. So what generally happens is that they have a much smaller number of birds. So you're feeding way less people for lots more acres of space. And to do this, to be able to do this, they have to, they're going to have to clear wetlands and prairies and deforest areas to be able to accommodate all these local free range, situations for the egg-laying hens and for pigs and whatever. So, it's actually been estimated that we would need closer to 5 planet Earths if we free-ranged all the animals that we have in confinement right now. It just can't be done. It cannot be done. Free-range, and I've said this before, free-ranging animals for food can never be more than a specialty market for a few elite buyers. That's all it can be. We can't scale this up. There's just no way to scale it up, right? There's an interesting study, but I'm gonna, actually, I think it's in the book. So you got to read the book for the interesting study I was going to talk about. Okay, so let's move on to grass-fed. All right, so grass-fed beef. Grass-fed beef can produce up to 50 to 60% more greenhouse gas emissions than commercial beef, conventional beef. It should really be conventional, I would say, because grass-fed is kind of commercial. Anyway, more water is wasted as well. So conventional cows are slaughtered at about a year old, right? That's give or take a few months, about a year old. But grass-fed cows, because they're not getting fattened up quickly with grain, with feed, it can take them 18 to 24 months longer to get up to market weight. So that's just so much more time that they are drinking the water and burping and emitting methane, and drinking the clean water, polluting the water. There's all these studies coming out, and it's so frustrating because why would someone buy this product, right? They think it's more environmental. I mean, that's really the main reason. I think they think it's better for the animals as well, but I'd say they think it's more environmental, right? That's why they're reaching for grass-fed whatever. Well, there's all these studies now coming out from Oxford, Harvard, Washington State University that have compared like feedlot cows, just conventional cow rearing, to grass-fed. And they keep finding again and again that grass-fed requires more land, more water, more fossil fuels, and it's just and produces more greenhouse gases. And it's just like it's like a facepalm moment. It's like, well, why why are we even doing this then? It's a situation where it's not only neutral, it's worse. And like I said in the very beginning, I thought that I was going to be going into all this research saying things like, well, grass-fed's better, but going vegan's best. No, here's one of those situations where, no, it's not better, it's actually worse. So this is the moment where there are some out there that would say, wait. You can't just throw the cows out into the pasture and think everything's going to be okay. There are methods, there are farming methods that you have to adhere to make it work. And that's where we get into regenerative grazing. Okay, I forgot I had this slide. This is an example of some grass-fed dairy that I found, took a picture of, and just thought it was interesting that they had her name here, Buttercup, and Buttercup here is long slaughtered, long gone by the time this milk, and it's just very interesting, the marketing, right? How they're trying to tell a story that doesn't exist, that isn't real. So regenerative grazing. Okay. So regenerative grazing, this is actually nothing new, even though we're just kind of now hearing about it. This has been called lots of different things over the years: holistic management, rotational grazing, short duration grazing. It's basically, but now the industry has kind of landed on the word regenerative and kind of using now the word regenerative for this grazing method. Basically, it's the same kind of thing as with free range. You have to use a much smaller number of animals in a much larger area of space, and they fence these paddocks. So there's all kinds of fencing, lots of fencing with these paddocks, and they move a small herd of cows from paddock to paddock so that they don't overgraze one area. Okay, that's the idea of regenerative grazing. Now, there is a lot to it. It is very complicated, but just to kind of an overview is that there really isn't any peer-reviewed research that shows that this is better. And in fact, even the industry's research, when a farm will hire a researcher to look into it, it's still not good, right? So interestingly, it's a nice story to tell, but the science doesn't hold water, right? And it's something that that everyone wants to believe is true. I think that want to believe that there's a way they can have their beef and eat it too, or have their cake and eat it too, and have their beef and eat it too. But there's been a lot of study and research around this, and it's really no better. it's too complicated to really get into in this shorter period of time or in this moment. But again, I'll give a plug for my podcast. I think I did earlier, but I'll do it again. Hope for the Animals podcast. The episode that is out now, Nicholas Carter, one of the authors from our greenwashing section, we break it down. He breaks it down, the regenerative animal ag, and really how this is, again, this narrative of some improvement that is not going to save the world. And it's really frustrating. The farm bill is coming up, and there's going to be this push to allocate money to regenerative grazing in the farm bill, and we've got to fight that. I really am grateful for the activists out there that are working on that issue, for the farm bill to not have this regenerative grazing aspect, be the thing that we see as the solution, because it really is not. Okay, so what is a solution? What can we do? Rewilding, regrowing the land. Turns out that there actually is something that is wonderful for the topsoil, for water quality, for greenhouse gas emissions, for sequestering carbon, right? It's leaving it alone. Leave the planet alone. Nothing sequesters carbon better than wild spaces, green spaces. So this is really what we need to focus on. We've got to be rewilding, regrowing, regreening. And the best way to do this is to stop farming animals, because they take up so much land, so much space. To farm animals takes up so much of the Earth's surface. And if we move to a plant-based diet that reduces and reduces and reduces the amount of land that we need, a vegan diet requires so little land comparatively. So we would have that, be able to rewild all of that space. It's so critical now. And it's so easy. I don't like this analogy. I got to think of a better one, but it feels so much like a silver bullet solution, like it's just like it's easy, but yet, of course, because of things and how things are, there's so much complication. But anyway, it feels exciting to me, because of course we think we're going to have all these technical solutions and technology to save us, and I'm sure we're going to need all that too. But here is a beautiful, natural, nature-based solution to the climate crisis, right? Rewilding. So cool. All right. So third section, I'm going to move along here to part 3 of the book, which is language and labels. And this section is really fascinating. It has some wonderful chapters. We talk about media and the journalism, and how they really prop up the humane hoax, how media is often looking for that feel-good story, so they will latch on to these kinds of new farming methods, and they'll just really give voice to this kind of farming without any pushback from any kind of other side. So that's a really fascinating chapter called Humane Myths and Media. There's just some wonderful, wonderful chapters in that section of language and labels. All right, so, and again, I just put here, there are inherent cruelties in all animal farming that cannot be avoided and are not diminished by a reassuring label. So, and I have this in my, I think it's in my chapter or in the introduction, I can't remember, but it's really interesting that there was this survey by the Sentience Institute that found that 58% of people think that farmed animals are treated well, and 75% believe that the products that they purchase come from animals that are treated humanely. And I strongly believe that this is because of these alternative labels and humane labeling, right? It's just exacerbating this effect that people think that things are improving. And it's appeasing consumers into this false sense that the industry is moving, towards better conditions for animals when in reality, it's getting worse. It's getting worse for these animals. So it's certainly not the case that things are getting better, but they see these labels, they assume that this is a trend throughout the industry, no matter what they're buying personally, right? So the Sentience Institute also said this suggests a psychological refuge effect where people justify their animal product consumption by incorrectly assuming they are eating ethically produced food. So, yeah. But language is so important. I think language is a huge part of all this, and it's really important. It's just so critical. We compartmentalize animals right into categories like pet and wild animal and food animal, and that kind of speciesist language. Speciesism meaning that this human superiority complex that we have over animals. That language really defines how we feel about these different animals. And then digging into the food animal piece, really the language is so important and key, and how we use these how they're using these labels tells such a story. 2 words like cage free can tell this huge story in people's minds, right? That is not reality. But this is an interesting quote from another chapter in the book. Devata Nair has a wonderful chapter in this section, in the language and labels section in the book. And her chapter is called Corrupting the Language of Animal Welfare. And she wrote, "It is also the crafty use of language in the stories we tell ourselves, that allow us to fawn over the animals at a zoo and still be able to consume other animals a few moments later for lunch without raising too many existential qualms." So, yeah, right? It's that language and labeling, separating the animal from that food, separating the food from the individual. It's really, really fascinating. So, yeah, what's going on with these labels? There's just so many that what is the story that's being told, right? So I recently saw this, it was actually a few years now, but I think it's still out, this grass-fed milk chocolate bar. And, I took a picture and just started really thinking about this. And I was like, what does the manufacturer want me to believe about this, right? What do they want me to know about this product from these 2 words, grass-fed, right? And, do they want me to think that the cows are happy? Do they want me to think that it's more environmental, a better environmental product? Is the product healthier, right? I think the answer to all these questions is implied, right? They want you to think all of that. They want you to believe a story that is untrue. And it's what does the label really mean, right? It means that the cow was fed grass at some point in their life. That's all. That's all. That's all the label means. All these other things that we tell ourselves, all this other story that comes up, that's marketing. And it's not reality. So, there's all these assumptions and suggestions from just 1 or 2 words, right? And how easily influenced we are as consumers, because we want to believe it. We want to believe it. We don't want to believe we're causing harm, right? We want to believe that we're doing the right thing, that we're choosing the right products, that we're not harming animals. So they're feeding into that. It's very manipulative. They're feeding into that desire for consumers to do the right thing. It's very, very frustrating. And again, it's why I wrote this book, why I edited this book, so that the reality of these labels can come out. Another one that I want to point out is responsibly raised. And this one just takes it to a whole nother awful level, saying responsibly raised and unconditionally loved. Okay. Wow. So unresponsibly raised, first of all. We're seeing this now at Whole Foods. Chipotle is using this one. It's just it kind of cracks me up because what does this mean? It's sufficiently vague that it could mean anything, you know? They could be talking about ethical, they could be talking about environmental, we don't know. We have no idea. And then that unconditionally loved, ooh, so awful. So, okay, so what are we looking at here? We're looking at a burrito, right? We're looking at dead flesh in a burrito. But of course, what the intention, or I think what they're trying to say, is that the animal that it came from was unconditionally loved. But to say that an animal that is now dead and cut up in a burrito was unconditionally loved, how on earth can you say that? Where is the unconditional love in brutally slaughtering a young, healthy animal? What? Wow, this stuff is really psychologically disturbing, I think, and just very awful, terrible. And just to think that these animals, saying these animals were loved when they are still, they're separating families, they're using painful body mutilations like dehorning and castration and debeaking, and they're still going to slaughter at a very young age. I mean, that to say that someone that goes through that is loved, wow, horrible. So yeah, it's awful. So another one of the chapters in this section from Joanne Kong. This is a great quote from her book, or her chapter in the book. Redefining terms to imply that the humane treatment of animals is possible within a framework of animal agriculture known as humane washing has been instrumental in providing the discourse necessary for the continued exploitation and abuse of animals. So that's what's going on here, is basically these labels are making it so they can continue their horrible practices and this terrible, unsustainable industry. All right. So moving on to the spiritual dimensions, I'm going to wrap up here pretty soon, and we will maybe be able to take some questions, but I think I'm running out of time possibly. But the spiritual dimensions in the book, this is just a small section that I really wanted to have in there for some really interesting chapters. One is called Honor Killing, Spiritual Bypass, and the False Faith in Do-It-Yourself Slaughter. This one was written by my husband, Dr. Kojan Bohanec. He is a Dharma professor of Dharma studies. And this is really fascinating. He talks about spiritual bypass in DIY slaughter, where, in do-it-yourself backyard slaughter, they're using these kind of flowery language and spiritual language to really kind of, put a nice package around what's happening and the reality of the violence of what's happening when you are killing an animal. Saying things like that we're connecting with the animal and we're sending the animal's spirit to the other side, whatever, all this stuff that they say. It's a fascinating read. I put on here this image of a slaughterhouse. This is a slaughterhouse in Petaluma, California, that got this fresh new white paint job, and they put on the side of the building Mindful Meats. And in my chapter, I go off on this and how awful it is that they would use this term mindful, from the mindfulness movement that is, drawn from Buddhist and Hindu cultures around meditation and being mindful of your actions, being mindful of what you're doing in the moment. It relates to karma and dharma and all kinds of stuff I get into in the chapter. And it's just to put that on the side of a slaughterhouse. It is, wow. It's mind blowing and awful. And as a spiritual person, it's offensive to me. Yeah. So just kind of wrapping up, I will say that I think that the humane hoax is actually a positive progression. And even though I've been talking all this time about how horrible it is, I also believe that there is hope within it because, why are people seeking out these labels? Because they care. They care about animals. They want to do the right thing. They don't want to be part of harming animals. That's why these labels sell, right? So I think that's hopeful. And I think that there will be a logical progression to eventually realizing that if you truly want to be humane, you can't kill an animal. You can't kill these animals and think that that's humane. It's the logical progression of treating them kindly, giving them space, whatever it is that people want. The logical progression is that you cannot kill them, and that will, the industry can't survive, obviously. So I think we'll get there. I really do. I have faith and hope that people that we will get there. But we can't trust the producers and the farmers and the manufacturers to reform their own business any more than we could trust the fossil fuel industry to reform their own business. So self-regulation doesn't work. We've got to make bold changes. So, all right, I'm seeing our host coming in. I'll flip through the last here really quick.
Take your time.
Yeah, the only truly humane choice is vegan. So I'd love to invite you to our upcoming conference, the Humane Hoax Project, of which this book is affiliated. We're having our Humane Hoax online conference on Saturday, May 20th. Would love you to join us. If you just go to humanehoax.org, you can learn more about it and register. We're going to dig in deeper to this book and have some of the authors unpack their chapters. I also want to give a plug to my podcast, the Hope for the Animals podcast. Right now I'm doing a book series. So we're looking at the book for about 4 episodes, doing kind of a book club style dig into the book, as well as having some of the chapter authors as guests. So please check out the Hope for the Animals podcast. You can get it wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can go just to our website and listen, hopefortheanimals.org. And finally, I will wrap up with this quote from my book. I really encourage you to get the book if you can from the publisher Lantern or from Amazon or wherever you buy your books. And I'll wrap up with this quote: "We must not let the deception of new marketing eclipse the fundamental cruelty of animal agriculture."